Hey everybody again, this is Rob Leese at Rob Leese on Letterboxd and at Rob the Movie Buff on Twitter, and I'm back to review the movies, the latest entry in the Mission Impossible franchise, Barbie and Oppenheimer. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is the 7th film in the MI saga, with Tom Cruise again back as Ethan Hunt, and this is the third mission movie in a row he's doing with Christopher McQuarrie at the director helm, with that being as good a director and actor pairing as any going. The story revolves around the releasing and constant evolution of an experimental and now sentient AI that governments want to grab, harness, and control, as does Gabriel, played by S.A. Morales, a mysterious figure from Ethan's past that is working in conjunction with the AI known as the Entity to cause mass chaos around the world. Ethan and his team must work again to gather both halves of a key to access the Entity and destroy it before Gabriel or any nefarious government acquires it. This film juggles being both a sequel to the McQuarrie MI films, most recently Rogue Nation and Fallout, and Fallout's my favorite in the series, and it's also a spiritual sequel to the first film in the franchise, directed by Brian De Palma in 1996, with Henry Snersny back as Eugene Kittredge, the first director of the IMF, but now the current director of the CIA, who is part of a group called the Community, who also wants to get control of the Entity. There's also a lot of homages to De Palma's style, such as split diopter, Dutch angles, and extreme close-ups, and just the sense of paranoia and not knowing who to trust or what to trust with the AI doing whatever it needs to survive. The MI films have mostly always given Ethan a great antagonist with a unique way to challenge him, whether it's Henry Cavill's The Hammer to Ethan's Scalpel in Fallout, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3 with that great interrogation scene, Solomon Lane as a rogue agent on the most opposite spectrum to Ethan's rogueness in Rogue Nation. The Entity is the perfect rogue AI to Ethan, the perfect rogue agent, although we don't really get clear answers as to Gabriel's past with Ethan. Although Palm Clementine as a French assassin working alongside Gabriel is really fun and fantastic and has a great fight scene in a small alleyway. And S.A. Morales is pretty good as Gabriel. We just don't really know much about him. Morales was also great as the villain in season 1 of Ozark. The team also comes across a talented pickpocket named Grace, played by Haley Atwell, who is also after the key but for more monetary reasons, and her and Ethan have a great dynamic, as there are several times she tries to escape but also needs his help. She's a great addition to the MI franchise. It'll be fun to see what she does in Part 2. Shea Wiggum, a great character actor. He plays an intelligence officer who's literally always on the run to get Ethan, and just as in the first film, he and his team are on their own. I love the creative leaps this movie takes, and the practical stunt work is incredible once again, though it's not Fallout level with the jump from the airplane and the helicopter battle, but the Fiat 500 drive through the Rome sequence, the train fight, and then the motorcycle ride into a base jump. Those are all great. There are a couple things that happened or may have happened, but there's no full clarification until Part 2 to certain characters that do feel, to me, just, I don't know, they feel, until it's fully clarified, it would be a tough pill to swallow. But again, it's kind of wait and see to Part 2. I did really enjoy it, especially at this point in time with, she was allegedly putting forth AI as a means to just reduce cost and creatability and get rid of, acting jobs and things like this. How the views AI as, it can be a tool, but it's the idea of someone being able to control it and use it to control the flow of information across the world and be weaponized by whatever government or entity, wants to use it, and that being incredibly dangerous. Overall, it's not my favorite in the series, but I was supremely entertained, and I can't wait for Part 2 whenever that comes out. And right now I have it as 8 to 8.5 out of 10, 4 to 5 on Letterboxd. Now let's get into Barbenheimer weekend. It was so cool and incredibly fun to see audiences of all kind go out to the movies for two vastly different types of movies in droves, and that's something for an opening weekend for both that's kind of a rarity. And I did have one of the two that I preferred, impressed me more, but nonetheless, it's great to have multiple films speak to people at one time, and I'm not sure between the strikes and the potential delays of future films and just the uniqueness of the craze around both films releasing on the same day that this opening weekend event will ever be replicated. But with that being said, starting with Barbie, directed by Greta Gerwig and starring Margot Robbie as stereotypical Barbie and Ryan Gosling as stereotypical Ken. I've enjoyed Greta Gerwig's last two movies a lot, Lady Bird and Little Women, which are very much about the female adolescence and young adulthood experience. And this is really her first chance to take a big swing with a bigger budget and an IP with those themes and do something unique with it. And I think she mostly succeeded. The castings of Robbie and Gosling are pitch perfect as the movie really shines. When the two of them are on screen, Gosling's comedic timing and musical timing is amazing, and Robbie pulls off the innocent doll look before being forced to finally confront strong emotions. Robbie, with her arc in the beginning as the Barbie who has the perfect life and lives in the matriarchal utopia and wants everything to stay as it is, and Ken, who wants Barbie's love, attention, and affection, but unfortunately does not get it. But when Barbie encounters existential crisis due to her doll in the real world being played with, developing an inability to stand on high heels and suddenly thinking of death and all of a sudden not feeling pretty, she is told she needs to go to the real world and find the one person who is playing with her in order to put things back to normal. Despite her apprehension, she goes, and surprisingly, Ken joins as well, wanting to show his worth to her. I think the film did a really good job of using the reversing of gender roles in the real world to have Ken learn of a flawed real world where he's given advice on how to gain attention and adulation, but for the wrong reasons. And Barbie, meanwhile, is objectified, looked down upon, and ostracized for the unfair beauty and societal standards for both men and women. The commercialization of the Barbie brand by Mattel has done. And she's ostracized for it by a young girl named Sasha, played by Ariana Greenblatt, whose mother, Gloria, is played by America Ferrera, and it has the Barbie doll that has started stereotypical Barbie's existentialism. And then also she's chastised for how her utopia has made it so that the Kens aren't respected or given a chance to be themselves. Production design was really great and creative by set designer Sarah Greenwood and decorator Katie Spencer, and the visual and story homages to 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Matrix, and Truman Show, those were fun. And then the I'm Just a Ken song is one of the better original musical pieces out this year. The Barbie and Ken doll being sort of a metaphor for a mirror to how society forces people into a box sometimes is very on the nose, but mostly works. The inclusion of the Mattel board led by Will Ferrell, that whole subplot felt a little flat to me. And I also felt like there was times the film was overly quippy, and it kind of got in the way of story, but the emotional and comedic moments provided as a whole, especially toward the end, won me over overall to the point that's like a 7.5 to an 8 out of 10 movie, and I currently have it as a 4 to 5 on Letterboxd. And finally, go to Oppenheimer, a biopic about theoretical physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, who was pivotal in the Manhattan Project and proliferation of the atomic bomb that dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945 toward the very end of World War II. This is a very unique biopic on just so many levels, with director Christopher Nolan using color to indicate Oppenheimer's perspective, Oppenheimer played by Cillian Murphy, his subjective perspective, and then black and white to indicate a more objective perspective, very often in scenes with Lewis Strauss, a senior atomic energy commission officer played by Robert Downey Jr. The film is also non-linear, going between Oppenheimer as an academic in London and Germany to his time as a professor at the University of Berkeley in California, working under the Manhattan Project under the guise of General Leslie Groves, played by Matt Damon, and then post-World War II, being offered a chance to be a academic once again at Princeton, and then also battling his credibility and his security clearance in 1954, and it's juxtaposed against Strauss's battle for Senate confirmation for Secretary of Commerce in 1958. Oppenheimer deals with difficulties in both his personal life in the form of womanizing, despite being married to his wife Kitty, played by Emily Blunt, with psychiatrist Jean Tatlock, played by Florence Pugh, and his professional life, battling bureaucracy and attempts to discredit him for alleged political sympathies. The story plays out very much like a broken symphony and stage play with multiple perspectives, with Ludwig Göransson's impeccable musical score weaving in and out of time frames and full context of interactions not fully revealed immediately but in due time. And every scene contains a name actor who gives a great performance, even if it's just one scene as a historical figure, such as Tom Conti as Albert Einstein, whose few interactions with Oppenheimer play a pivotal role. Benny Safdie as Edward Teller, the founder of the hydrogen bomb. Kenneth Branagh as Nobel Prize-winning physicist Niels Bohr. Olivia Thirlby as Lily Hornia, a scientist on the Manhattan Project, and so many more. Josh Hartnett's in this movie. There's just so many more that I don't want to reveal. The main standouts, though, are Cillian Murphy, whose ability to portray Oppenheimer's dread, guilt, and paranoia, combined with the way cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema shoots him in close-up, and it really intensifies practically every scene, even those that are just a few people just talking in a room. But the music and the cam work makes everything feel free-flowing and never static. And Downey Jr. as Strauss, he's the other big standout, as his egotistical battle with Oppenheimer is on full display, showing their battles for power and influence and historical significance. Robert Downey Jr. said before this movie he and the relationship between Strauss and Oppenheimer is portrayed very similarly to the one in Amadeus. The most memorable sequences to me will be the atomic bomb test, the immediate aftermath of the announcement of the bomb's detonation in Japan, and it just plays out so hauntingly. And then the last line of dialogue and shot, and its meaning for the legacy of the atomic bomb, the scientists there, and Oppenheimer. It's an incredible picture about the dangers of exceptionalism and man's desire to arm itself infinitely. And it's one, to some extent, you need time to emotionally process, but soon enough I do want to get a chance to see it again and, be able to pick up on little things. But it was just an incredibly unique experience and movie. And it's currently one that I have as a 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. And so thank you again so much for listening, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts are of these movies, if you had a chance to see them, and just your overall weekend at the movies if you did. Thank you so much, and have a great day.